and a few of the counties with specific information. If you have questions as we go along, if you look on the right-hand side of your panel, there is a Q&A section. You can put a question in there. If you have a specific county question and I have the information, I'd be happy to answer it. Otherwise, you can also email the email address. My email address is vcoyne@short-sale-innovations.com. Feel free to send me an email with any specific default marks, foreclosure questions, short sale questions, etc. at any time. So we're going to get started. Having a problem with my screen. So again, it's 2014 default market, short sale, and foreclosure stats. The foreclosure, it's important to understand the difference in the terminology when we're talking about foreclosures. I'm always speaking in the sense of foreclosures that are in process. They're in the court system. Florida is what we call a judicial foreclosure system, which means it's under the jurisdiction of the court system. Other states are not what we call non-judicial, and they're not overseen by the court. And we'll talk about those states as we go along a little bit. It's important to compare Florida as a hardest hit state in comparison to other hardest hit states, and why we have such a bottleneck of properties still stuck in foreclosure. So we always discuss that as we're going through. And it's important to understand the difference between new foreclosure filings, in process, REOs, which in your MLS refers to properties that really have already been foreclosed upon, which now are owned by the bank and are technically and should be called an REO. They call those foreclosures. And I think that gives way to some confusion, as well as list pendants forward, they refer to as a pre-foreclosure, which in fact that is the foreclosure process, and it's not pre-foreclosure. Simply means the owner and the property are in foreclosure, and that foreclosure is a process. As you know, in the past, due to some of the laws that we have in Florida, it would take several years to foreclose on somebody's home, so they may be in that foreclosure process for a very, very long time, or they may have a foreclosure defense attorney to assist them through the process and stall the case. With the new fast track law, and we'll talk about that as we go along, we're seeing that less and less the time frames are shrinking. Here in Palm Beach County, which are our headquarters, Trident Title has 14 offices statewide. Our corporate office is in Palm Beach County. In Palm Beach County today, with a new filing of a foreclosure complaint, between the filing date and the sale date, we're seeing about 120 days on new cases. But that's what I'm referring to. That very first stat there is new foreclosure filing. So that's the newly defaulted homeowner. That is down 51.9% over 2013, which was the outlook and the expectation for 2014. We're seeing fewer and fewer people default, but we still have many, many, many tens of thousands of homeowners currently still in default and currently still in the foreclosure process. So and I think this is the type of news that you hear, let's say on the 6 o'clock news in the evening, where foreclosure filings are down, and they certainly are. And I'll give you an example of Palm Beach County and Broward County and Miami-Dade. They kind of run around the same. But in Palm Beach County, we used to see foreclosure filings back in 10, 11, and 12 as many as 2,000 or 3,000 a month. Last year, in 2 years ago, 2012, they were about 2,000 a month of new filings. And currently, we run somewhere between 600 and 1,000 new filings a month. So again, when we're talking about numbers, even that is still a significant amount of defaulted homeowners. Now, what's interesting today in 2014 is when we talk about defaulted homeowners, they're not always underwater. Some of these properties, they just can no longer afford to make their payment, but they either have enough equity or they're borderline on their equity, and so they're not really a traditional short sale. They actually may, if the numbers work close enough, that they could actually be a traditional sale. So, and we'll talk about that as we go along. So the next thing I want to talk about is the next stat that you see there is foreclosure auction sale. That's the foreclosure auction, which in the state of Florida is conducted by the county in which the property is located. So the county circuit court oversees the foreclosure case, and they also oversee the auction. It's held by the county clerk of courts. And that's online in all counties. You can log in. I do have some links for you if you're interested in a link to your particular county auction site. The bank offers the property for bid on the day of the auction. Most counties have an auction calendar. We'll look at that at the very end of the PowerPoint. And you can log on there and see what's happening. That's the end of the foreclosure process, is the auction itself. That's the bank's ability to take the property back, and that's how they gain ownership of the property, or they can sell it to a third-party bidder. What's interesting is in 2013, we saw third-party bidders outweighing what the banks were buying back. So we were seeing fewer REOs on the market. And in 2014, we start to see that change and shift in the first quarter, where the bank is now, again, back in where they are the highest bidder in most cases. So something I go on, at least the Tri-County area, on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, and I look at, I create data sheets that just tell you what's happening in the market, who's purchasing the properties, what are they going for in conjunction with their judgment of how old the case is. So that's the kind of data that we're constantly looking at. So the foreclosure auction sales are up 16.3% over 2013. But the next stat down, and if any of you attended my last quarterly stat, which was Q4 of 2013, we saw a huge spike starting in May of 2013, where foreclosure auction sale, the actual auction, so they're coming out of the foreclosure system into the auction, the bank is buying them back, or a third-party bidder, we're up 110% over 2012. So we're seeing more and more properties come out onto the market. Again, whether they're, I think there's, in 2013, we were seeing more of a 50-50 split between third-party bidders, which are typically investors, versus banks. Bank-owned properties and now REOs in your MLS. So the next screen, this is, again, Florida. We're always looking at the Florida numbers. The Florida default market for all properties in what they call some stage of foreclosure. So in the blue is 26.4%. That's what they are referring to. This data that we're looking at today, first of all, I want to say is from Realty Track, and the way they break it down, they call it pre-foreclosure, but that's actually the properties that are in foreclosure within the process, within the judicial system, within the court system. And then you see 45.3%, excuse me, going to auction. And then actually out of that 45%, you can see 28% became bank-owned and REO. So what happened to the other percentage? Well, those are the ones that went to third-party bidders. So that, again, interesting information. The next screen is Florida, the state of Florida versus the national rate of foreclosures. You can see that we are still at about a 25% rate of foreclosure, whereas the national is at about 9%. We're still one of considered the hardest hit states, and currently, because of it, and some of you may have again heard this statistic on the 6 o'clock news, is that we are currently the highest foreclosure state in the country, which is true, but that's based on, currently that information is based on the foreclosure auction itself. And the reason the auctions are up also is because we've had so many tens of thousands of properties stuck in the system for several years, and with the new fast track law, it's designed to push those properties out into the market. So some of that is a result, direct result of the new fast track law, which was passed in July of 2013, July 1 of 2013. And it's something that we were really in need of because of the problem with the properties. So this next screen shows the average every 1 in 407 homes in the state of Florida in some stage of foreclosure. And then it gives you the top 5 counties. They're naming Flagler, 1 in every 222, Miami-Dade, 1 in every 272, and so on and so forth. Now, if you're interested in learning more about your particular county, I'd be happy to send you the link as to where I derive this data from Realty Track, and then you can really kind of drill down into your particular county, in your particular area with the stats. So this terminology we were discussing earlier, the only time we really consider something a pre-foreclosure is the demand notice. In the state of Florida, the demand notice to cure the default is 30 days. Other states that are non-judicial, like Arizona, California, Nevada, some of the other hardest hit states, again, are what we call non-judicial states, excuse me. And so their demand notices are a little bit longer. They typically are 90 or 120 days. I know Massachusetts is also 120 days. So here's what happens. You become late on your mortgage. You're 30 days late. You get a phone call from the bank. You're 60 days late. You receive a few more phone calls from your bank. You're 90 days late. You start getting notices from the bank and harassing phone calls. At about, on average right now, at about the 120-day mark, you receive a notice typically from the law firm that's going to represent the lender in the foreclosure case. And then the next step is the demand notice. The demand notice is going to give you the total amount of the mortgage, late fees, interest, penalties, etc., to bring your mortgage current or reinstate your mortgage. You have 30 days from the time that you receive the notice in which to reinstate that full amount. Bank will not take partial payments. Like we hear from homeowners every day that say, well, I called the bank and I tried to make a partial payment and they would not let me. And they actually don't have to, once they accelerate the mortgage, they actually don't have to accept payments. So this is your last period of time to make your mortgage current, and then they accelerate the terms of the note. They basically call it in and start the foreclosure proceedings. Again, that's a 30-day demand notice in the state of Florida. And then once that happens, immediately thereafter, after the 30 days are over, then they file the complaint package with the county court to start the foreclosure proceedings. Within that complaint package, the list pendants is in the complaint package. It's pulled out, it's stamped by the county clerk, and it's sent over to the official records to put the public on notice that you are in foreclosure. So realtors that are listening, if you have homeowners or properties that you're working with in which you go to the tax records, you're going either through your MLS or through your county, and you see that there's a list pendants, the year in which the case was filed is the year in which their foreclosure case started. And again, I always like to emphasize that this does not mean pre-foreclosure. It means the property's in foreclosure. So that's the list pendants. And then from there we go to the summary judgment. At the time the judgment is entered, the sale date is set, which is the auction date. And then after the auction, if the bank purchases the property back, they are the highest bidder. Then when it hits the MLS, it becomes an REO. This is the some people may find this interesting, the foreclosure inventory dollar value. As you can see here, the bulk of the foreclosures, and this is statewide, again, county per county is going to look quite different. I would say Palm Beach County is probably somewhere between the 150 range to about 300 range might be our largest group of properties that are in foreclosure. We did see a couple years ago rounds of property that were less than the 100,000. We're not seeing that as much any longer, but that's because as a result of the values, of course, rising significantly over the past 2 years. So as values are going up, folks are really just less underwater than they previously were. I recently, and it started around December, January, February. I do a lot of seller consultations, homeowners that are thinking about what their alternatives are. They've been in default maybe even as much as a year or two. They haven't made their mortgage payment. They know they're in foreclosure, or they think they're in what they call pre-foreclosure. And I do the numbers with them, and they're either borderline, and we're just talking commission and closing costs, they're upside down, but the value of the property, they're not upside down. So whenever you're talking to a homeowner, or you're thinking about taking their listing and you think it might be a short sale, you know that they're in default, today a crucial question is, how much do you owe on the property? And most folks who haven't made a mortgage payment in a few years may not know, but certainly we can call in for a payoff, and also just last statement that they may have received, or a demand notice from the law firm if they've recently received that, is always helpful. So any information that you can gather, it's important to take a look at that and calculate that as the prices are going up. I see that more and more, talk to more homeowners every day in which they are no longer upside down. Makes it a little bit easier because not everything's a short sale, so even though they're in default, would just be what we call a full debt payoff, stop the foreclosure, and give good title. So again, we talked about the terminology at the beginning, the judicial foreclosure process, non-judicial. In the past, the state's average was for the foreclosure action itself to get through the court system used to be about 847 days. And if you have heard those types of numbers, 800, 1,200, well, they're down to a lot of them, especially the new filings, and the goal is to be at about 120 mark, which is what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have used as a guideline for their foreclosure process. So that's the ultimate goal here in Florida, is that we're more in keeping with the other states in our foreclosure process. When a homeowner receives a foreclosure notice, and typically that's done by a process server, they have, in most states, in most counties in Florida, it's 20 days to answer the complaint. There are some counties that are 30. They have to answer the complaint, and that's something that they have to file with the court system. Simply writing a letter to either the court or to the bank is not sufficient. They answer the complaint, and they can request, or they can hire an attorney for foreclosure defense, and that will help stall the case. Once they hire a foreclosure defense attorney and they contest the case, then it becomes what we call a litigated matter. Under the new fast track law, the litigated matters are more like a year long now, but in the past they've been 3 or 4 years. So here in May, this was May of 2013, is when we started to see the huge changes and the spikes in the foreclosure auctions. So May in 2013 was the highest in the state of Florida, highest auction month nationwide, according to Realty Track. We saw that trend go through July, and then it slowed a little bit in the fall as a result of the new fast track law. It initially slowed the process a little bit until the courts and the attorneys got a handle on exactly what the laws meant. The affirmative defenses have changed. The proof of burden now is on the homeowner and not on the bank. The bank does not have to produce the original promissory note as they've had to in the past. So that will change the game a little bit, and they'll be able to proceed quicker. And it was the highest foreclosure rates in Florida since October of 2010. The statistics at the bottom are just some of the Tri-County here, Broward County, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach County. This is an example of the amount of properties that are still in the process of being foreclosed on. Some of them several years old, still stuck in the system. So Broward is 43,000, Miami-Dade 46,000, Palm Beach County 36,000 properties. Now, if you have an idea of, we talked about inventory. Last year I started looking at these statistics. I was so surprised that inventory was low, but I know that there's a lot of properties in foreclosure. And so I really started comparing, certain areas of what kind of residential inventory you have in your MLS and the amount of properties that are in foreclosure. I really think that it's resulted in this kind of pent-up, push for properties, limited the inventory, and has forced the prices higher because so many properties really are. I don't particularly call them or believe in the shadow inventory. The shadow inventory theory is based on the fact that the banks are purposely holding back properties, and I would, at least in the state of Florida, disagree with that. They've been mercy to the court system and to the foreclosure defense attorneys stalling the cases, and that's why it's taken so long, whereas the bank does not have control of the foreclosure process. In other states, they have 100% control. They don't go through the court system, as I said previously. They're only, I'm going to use Arizona and Nevada as an example. Their only requirements are to the 120-day demand notice. Then they set the auction date, There's no judgment. They set an auction date by a private auctioneer, and the only other requirement is to advertise the sale 3 consecutive weeks, 21 days prior to the sale. Most states, that's their only requirement. They can postpone that themselves if a homeowner is working on an alternative, which would be either a loan modification or a short sale as an example. Typically, most lenders allow up to 2 to 3 postponements, and then after that, but they have control. They can set the auction dates, whereas in the state of Florida, it's out of their hands. It's up to the court. The court sets the auction date, and what we're seeing more and more, and this has been going on for about a year, when we have a short sale that's in process, even when the bank's attorney is asking for a postponement, and we have a short sale contract, the judge and the courts are saying no, and they're allowing them to go to foreclosure. They're allowing the bank to buy them back, and that's why our auction rates are so high today. We will continue to see that trend through 2014. This just goes over the new fast track law. It was originally designed to help push vacant and abandoned properties through the system, but it went a little bit further than that. It also goes on to say if you don't answer the complaint in that 20-day period of time, they will fast track the property through. If it's not owner occupied in a primary residence, they have the right to fast track it through. Again, here in Palm Beach County, we're seeing about 120-day mark, sometimes a little bit less. But I think on average, we're seeing 4 to 6 months in some other state counties as well. And if you've had that experience in any county that you're in, we'd love to hear that from you. Any information that I can also pass on and share with other people in counties throughout the state is always helpful. Let me know what's going on in your market center. This is an example of the next screen. This is Palm Beach County. This is the foreclosure auction site. This is what it looks like. You can all find it under your county clerk of courts. They're a little layered, but eventually, and if you need a link, just let me know. I'd be happy to send it to you. The next one is the actual bids coming up. You can view the calendar. I like this view on this screen the best. But if I click on the 19th as an example here, I think I used the 18th though on the next screen. I can open that hyperlink up, and I can look at every property that's going to sale that day. Here we go right here. I think I did, yeah, I used, this is from November 18th. At the top, you see how many properties were advertised for sale. That's your notice of sale. How many properties the sale date was canceled. There was 40. 61 were sold back to the plaintiff, which would be the bank, and 14 were sold to a third-party bidder, which in most cases is an investor. You can go online. You can hyperlink into the over here on the side where it says details. You can see the bids. They are it's a private bid. You see them as they're going along, and then after the negotiations, then you can open up the details and see who was the highest bidder and what the bids were all along. So if you have an investor who's interested in getting involved, each county has their own specifications and rules and regulations to sign up, start an account, make a deposit in their registry. A certain amount of money has to be there within certain days. But if you're interested in that, or you have an investor who's interested, please let me know. I can assist you and walk you through that. So really today, when we talk about the default market and we look at the tens of thousands of properties still going in newly defaulted, ones that are still in foreclosure within the process, we're talking about lead generation for short sales. Which ones are, what a good short sale, which ones are a bad short sale, which ones are most likely to go to foreclosure. And, I hear a lot of, I'm on the road, I'm teaching, I'm out 5 days a week talking to a lot of realtors, and, the sense still is out there that the bank really doesn't want to foreclose on your home, and I think that's a dangerous thing to tell people because they really do. The investors have become very tough today. REOs were down last year, so they're trying to rebuild their inventory, is my theory. And I think that they want to keep about a third, and a third. Third are in foreclosure, third REOs, and a third of short sales. Third maybe a portion of those short sales also going to third-party bidders. So it's important to know and understand how long your homeowner has been in default before you make any decision, who the lender. Knowing the facts of your case at the bottom of the screen is the most important thing in a short sale. How to qualify your seller and 10 easy questions. I have that questionnaire form. If you're interested, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to send it to you. But understanding who the lender is, how many mortgages there are there other liens against the property, and how long have they been in default. If you look at their the tax information and you realize that they've been in foreclosure since 2009 and they have a foreclosure sale date set, it's most likely not the great candidate for you. The likeliness that that case can be saved is probably very, very slim percentage. And not that we can't get them done or we can't try to get them done, but without complete and absolute cooperation from the seller in a really timely manner with all their documents, it becomes very, very difficult to do. So what I say to realtors today is your best client is the newly defaulted. Your best short sale candidate, or even a traditional sale, if they're not upside down, they're no longer underwater, is that newly delinquent, the 120-day mark, 6-month mark, and the 1-year mark. They've been in foreclosure less than 1 year, if anything, and that's a great resource. I know here in Palm Beach County, the Beach MLS, there's a great CRS data program that helps you. You can target certain neighborhoods and HOAs, and you can pull a list of everybody who's in foreclosure. You can do mailings, phone calls, and really target certain homeowners that eventually will be looking for help. So at this time, I wanted to mention it is in Palm Beach County, which is our corporate office area. I have teamed up with Patty Mandis. She's the Director of Training with RAPB, for the MLS. And she teaches the CRS data training. And she and I have teamed up on June 3rd at 10 a.m. We're going to send out, if you're interested, shoot me an email. It's going to be here up off Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard at the West Palm Beach Event Hall at, I think it's going to be 10 to 12. And we are going to teach you we'll teach you a bit more about the terminology, how to target homeowners that are newly defaulted, how to find that information very easily, how to create Excel sheets from the MLS, how to do mailings from the MLS, run labels right out of your MLS. It's a great resource, and if you're interested, please let me know. And we look forward to seeing you or hearing from you again next month. We'll be sending out the topic a couple weeks in advance for the month of June. And thank you for attending. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to email me. vcoyne@short-sale-innovations.com. And thank you for listening today. Have a great day.